Hi! For today's video, I really wanted to take the time to talk about disability and, more importantly, the sort of disassociation from disability and from the word disability and from the idea behind disability, because I honestly thought this was a just me thing, and I have learned over the last couple of weeks that it's actually something that affects a broad spectrum of people who are disabled. Over the last couple of years, we've made a lot of societal progressions, I would say. You know, we really got to see, from the time I was younger to like now, we've really got to see people who are part of like the LGBT group really embrace that side of them and really be okay with that label. And we've got to see people of color like really get to celebrate and love their race and really, you know, celebrate that part of them. I think that's an amazing thing, but yet disability, for some reason, is still seen as a bad word, and even people who are disabled still want to not be associated with disability. You know always that I will call myself out first if I need to. Like, I will always be like, this was a bad thing I did, and I'm ashamed of it, but I will talk to you about it. So I will use my own example from my own life. Now, as you know, if you watch my channel, my disability is purely physical. It's not developmental at all. And so because it is just physical, I could kind of trick myself into thinking I was like other kids when I was younger without even realizing I was doing it. So like I could sit with, you know, the able-bodied kids, the cool kids or whatever, and they would be making fun of one of our classmates with like, say one of the classmates with cerebral palsy or with autism, and without even thinking I would join them. For some reason I didn't see myself as one of those kids because, you know, I was aware that I was disabled, but I wasn't a disabled person. Those were two very different ideas to me. And even though, you know, I would be told that there were certain field trips I couldn't go on because it wasn't accessible, or my friends would be going to a birthday party and I couldn't go because it wasn't accessible. For some reason, that all just kind of skimmed over in my head, and I was still one of the other kids, and I didn't understand. But eventually, I guess, as I became an adult, and I kind of wanted to get more into activism, and, you know, YouTube became a thing for me, and I don't know, I guess really just noticing these sort of things in my life that were different because I was disabled, the way people treat me differently, the way I can't get into places that I should be able to get into because I'm disabled. It kind of snapped the ideas together that I'm disabled, I'm a disabled person, this is a thing that we should be doing. And now I'm very much so, you know, go ahead, talk about my disability. If, you know, you're going to quote me in something and you go, a disabled woman, or you go, you know, a disabled YouTuber, Abby Green, I'm not going to be offended by that. And I'm not going to be offended by, you know, disabled person versus person with a disability. It doesn't matter to me because I don't prioritize one over the other. Because at the end of the day, my disability is not a throwaway trait about me, you know what I mean? It affects every part of me, both physically, because it is skeletal, but it also affects my viewpoints and my ideas about literally everything. Everything I think of the world is skewed because of my disability. But a couple of weeks ago, I got to talk with a whole bunch of other disabled people, and some of them with also very obvious physical disabilities, much like mine. Not the same as mine, but much like mine. And a lot of them were talking about how they were offended by things when they are called like disabled artists. Why are they disabled artists and not just artists? And I have a couple of thoughts about that. Like, first of all, why are you so intent on fitting in, on being like everyone else? Everyone else is really not that great, you know what I mean? Why do you want to just be an artist when you could be a disabled artist, when your disability could help bring that part out of you? But then the other part that got me thinking was the way they were all talking about disability. The fact that they didn't want to be disabled artists, the fact that they didn't want to be known as a disabled blogger, a disabled writer, a disabled this, that, the other, was kind of like they were associating disability with a negative connotation. Disabled was being used as a bad word. And that's really why I wanted to make this video, was to kind of explain to you how I see this sort of disassociation with disability, and the fact that disability is still seen as a bad word, even in, you know, modern times, even by people with disabilities, because for some reason it's still not okay to not be normal or, you know, able-bodied. And that really upsets me. There's no really final thought to this video other than I just wanted to kind of open the discussion to what you think of the word disability and why it is seen as a bad word. And personally, my final message to the disabled community as a whole is to keep using that word. Keep referring to yourself as a disabled whatever. Keep calling us the disabled community, because the more we use that word and we just use it in general, you know, whatever the connotation, you know, you take the power away a little bit. And I mean that in a good way. You take whatever negative connotation comes with it, you take it out by normalizing the word, by normalizing the idea of disabled, so that someday I can be like, I'm a disabled YouTuber, and they're just like, oh cool, do you talk about your disability on your channel, or do you just have a disability? And it doesn't really matter which way it is, you know? Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you have not subscribed already, and I will see you next time. Bye!